we were always here. And we were always on this land, you know. We may have moved from place to place, a racing camp, a hunting camp, or blueberry camp, you know, or go fishing for camp, you know. We did a lot of that, and the elders always said we were always here, you know. The money to put us down here, and that's just where we were going to be. And I had an heart operation when I was 11 years old. They closed the valve on me, so I was one of those you consider a blue baby.
Mm.
Yeah. So I was, even though I did a lot of things, climbed trees, hunted for snakes, all the tomboy things you do. We'd go out in the water and hunt for snakes and frogs, you name them, you know. We used to come home from school and get off the bus and we'd smell homemade bread and baked beans, you know, from the bus. And usually you don't tell stories unless there's snow on the ground. But this one we used to talk about that during the winter, you know, when you listen real good at night, you hear the trees breaking, they snap from the cold, you know, and they used to say that was a little old lady cutting down her trees for firewood, and they called her Mutchikikwawish. So every time my dad would tell us that, we'd hear the trees breaking, and he'd say, "Oh, that must be Mutchikikwawish." And I'd insist, no, it wasn't, because she's sitting right here, you know, not realizing he meant another person, because that's how we knew her Indian name was that. Her name was Angela, and we call her Beige One. Beige. She was one woman that was Indian named Ishkuashikwe. And she was, she went to Flanger, South Dakota school. And she was salutatorian. She was the second highest of her class. You know, and she was very knowledgeable. She liked to talk. And she had a good sense of humor. She went to school on the relocation program, the program that came out of the Bureau of Indian Affairs for Native people. And that was to make sure that we got a chance to get off the reservation and go work at a trade and learn a trade. And she became an X-ray technician. He went to school in Carlisle, boarding school, and finished there. And he came back and he still knew his language. He still knew how to speak the language. He knew about some of the medicines that you needed to make yourself well. You know, every time he went to the hospital, he would call it the Chamoquan Hospital, the White Hospital. When he came home, he would take some Indian medicine. And I'd say, "How come you're doing that?" And he'd say, "I'm cleaning myself out." Because I was at that white man hospital. So he'd take the Indian medicine and purge himself. I went to beauty school in Green Bay, cosmetology school. And I went out over there. I'm 17 years old, soon to be 18. My dad said, "You're going, you know, to relocation." So I went there to a whole new city, and I found a lot of friends there. There was like an apartment building that was made for people that were going to schools. That was a 9-month course. And my sister Bev came. She went to business school for a while.
In Green Bay?
Yeah. she came to stay with me. I had my apartment already. And then when she moved to Chicago, I stayed back in Green Bay and finished school. And when I finished, I moved to Chicago. So then I signed up, and they call it an temporary office work agency. And they would send you to various places to work for a while. Somebody went on vacation. You'd go there and take over their job. So I never worked as a beautician. Gave a lot of haircuts. So when I met my husband, we got married there. I knew him when I was 15 years old. We were married for 39 years. And he was another person that was a very formidable person. And he liked it, and he ended up working in childcare, daycare, licensing family daycare centers, and training the parents to how to run a daycare. So, and he was a powwow person. He loved to go to powwows. When I went to the Social Security office at the time to change my Social Security card over to my married name, I went there and they told me when I filled out the application, it said your race, so I put AI, American Indian. And she told me I couldn't do that. And I said, well, I am American Indian. You know, I can't change it. I can't change me. And she said, well, you're either black or you're white. And they considered Indians white at the time, you know. And I felt that was really strange, you know. That's my first taste of real racism against the black people and the white people. I do my prayer in the morning, offer my tobacco.
Every morning?
Yeah, every morning.
Can you still speak fluent Ojibwe?
Well, when I say my prayer in the morning, tell them I need to do that means my children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren.
Uju, when Matuji Kwe Shimikazuya, and my second name is Beverly Lucia. When the first school I went to, when you go down Cranberry Marsh Road, that one road that says White Pine, there was a school back there, it's still standing there. We went there, we had to walk to school and walk back and forth. We didn't have a bus. And then while we were at White Pine School, they transferred us to Hurdle. That building on top of the hill from Hurdle was a school. That's where we went. And we walked to school, even in the winter. We had a very smart teacher, and she used to make home visits to the families and got to know the parents. And we had fun. That's the only way they could get the fish, is make their own spears. And we didn't have fishing lines and hooks like that. There's just spears. When we were growing up, we used to, especially in the summer, we'd pick blueberries, sell them, buy our stuff. In the fall, my mother and me used to go ricing. When they riced, they got 500 pounds of rice. That's how much rice to be around. Because I remember in our house, they had their closet, There used to be like those 100-pound flour sacks. There'd be about 5 of them lined up full of rice. And every time we needed something, my dad would be scooping some in a sack, and they'd go to town. And there was they called him Mr. Wilson. He owned a drugstore in Spooner, so they'd go there and you'd buy the rice from him, and that's how they'd get us stuff like our shoes and all the things we needed. And my dad trapped. We used to be happy when we get off the bus in the winter and we got in our house. We'd smell mink. So we'd be happy. That meant money. Because they sold them for like $90, $100 or something. Sometimes that smell stuck to your clothes. We'd tease each other, oh, you guys must be rich now. When we were growing up, we always respected each other, and then my dad always made sure we watched our manners, because that's the way he was taught in Carlisle. And then we had to help with the dishes and everything. When we had, like, if my mom made pie or something, and there was one piece saved for the one that wasn't at the table, nobody touched it, you know. There's a lot of times everybody wanted to have a second piece, but we didn't touch it. It was small. Yeah, it was one of the log cabins. It had 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, dining room combined. When I moved back, I got a job, but we didn't have no daycare or people. You know, to me, I didn't leave my kids with just anybody, you know. And so we said we gotta have a daycare. So we started a daycare with me and my sisters. So me and my sisters went to Rice Lake. We took these early childhood classes, and then we got a grant and we established the daycare. And I got a job as a teacher's aide. I worked there 6 years. I became the aide, the teacher, and the director. We were licensed for 20. And then we had a fenced-in playground. I worked there 6 years, and then homeschool coordinator job opened in Siren. I applied for that, and I got it there. And I was there for 28 years. People would start thinking about their own traditions and stuff like that instead of things like they always want money and to buy things. I mean, you do need money nowadays to live, but you got to remember your traditions too. You know, things are changing so fast nowadays. Even a high school education isn't enough anymore. You got to go to college in order to get a good job to raise your family. Yeah, there's a lot of things people aren't doing that they should be teaching their children. I always think maybe if they were taught, some of the ones that are doing things they're not supposed to, like drugs and everything, that they would, if they had a traditional upbringing, they probably wouldn't be doing all that stuff.
Well, I lived across a lake, Sand Lake, and my brother and I used to walk to school.
And I know we used to walk to school, and there was this farmer had a farm up there, and his horses used to come galloping down to the fence, and oh, I used to be so scared. You know, then you picked up the language from them. You know, my dad did, my mother, my grandmother, my aunts. And we all have Indian names. What was your Indian name?
Wimitibushikwe.
Wimitibushikwe.
Yours
Mine was Chiminikwe.
they used to call you Chibinikwe or Wabash.
My dad used to call me Wabash, and you know, it's I hate to say it means white.
She would have the same thing my dad told us. Never forget who you are. You say, you're a Shinabe, and you'll always be. He says, don't forget your language or who you are. Don't try to be somebody you're not.
I graduated from there, and then I went to a year in Siren, and then the next year I went to Flandreau, South Dakota, which was an Indian school. And I graduated there. We had to stay there all year round, and then come home, and then we'd go back the next year. What was it like? Oh, it was nice. It was really nice. You know, because you got to, of course, you missed your parents, you know. And I went to Chicago for one day because there was more opportunities, and then Minneapolis.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday
to you. Happy birthday, dear Harriet. Happy birthday to you.
My name, my English name, is Doris M. Emery. My Indian name is Chuag. We lived with my grandma and my aunts, so there was quite a few of us living together in this house. And then when I was about six or seven, this reservation they had log houses, and it was completed. So my grandma lost her house to taxes. When they gave her Social Security check, they took her house from her. So we had to move. They moved first, and they were living up. They had a cabin down the hill. And then my mother and them had one right next door to them, and that's where we moved. It was like a 3-room cabin, and we all stayed there. Once you reached womanhood, then you had to spend a year almost like in confinement. I mean, you had to stay in your room for 4 days, and you had for a year you had your own plate, your own fork, spoon, and stuff, and you could eat out of that. You were kind of treated like you had the plague or something. And you couldn't, your play days were over with. You stayed home and they taught you how to do the housework and cook, and my grandma would talk to me about the medicines, because she was a medicine lady, and she would go out and gather medicines, so she would talk to me about them and tell me what they were used for and so forth like that. And then once my year was up, then she took me with my aunt, my youngest aunt, and my grandma. We used to go out in the woods, and they would gather up the herbs and dig around in the ground, pull them out of the ground, and you gathered bark and just different medicines like that. And they had little bags, you put them in and you brought them home. And you always put tobacco out while you were doing this, before you did it. And we would bring it home and everything, and people would come from miles around to my grandma because they were sick. There was something wrong with them, and she would doctor them and give them the medication and tell them what to do and stuff like that so they could get better. It had to be 44 and 45 because I went to Flandreau and we had to stay there, you know, the Indian boarding school. And we'd leave here, they'd pick us up in the VIA bus in August, the 1st of August. And then they wouldn't bring us back till the end of May. And so we had to stay in Flandreau, South Dakota all year. And it was great. I loved every minute of it. I mean, they had running water, electricity, and we got to watch, listen to the radio, and we got to go to movies. Ann she was working for Illinois Bell as an operator, and she was telling me, you should apply for a job there. So I went down there one day and I applied and I was hired. And I got to be a long distance operator. And Chicago was like the hub, the long distance hub. So they'd come to us and then we would hook them up to the different cities that they wanted. So when that call came in from Dallas, it came to the Chicago office and I picked up the call. And it was a government call, and I had to put a supervisor on and I knew it was really something important. And we had to connect them to Washington, to a number in Washington, D.C., and that was the day that President Kennedy got killed. And the chief operator that was on duty, she kept looking at me. And finally, I suppose she couldn't stand it anymore. She called me in her office, and so I went in there, and she said, the head office wants to know what nationality you are. And I started laughing, and I said, no, they don't. They already know you want to know. Why don't you just ask me? So I told her I was a Native American, and what tribe I was from. St. Croix Chippewas of Wisconsin. And I don't know, she knew what I was even talking about. She probably thought I was talking something else. And but that was so funny, because they were so curious to know what I was. They gave you a pass, an ID card with your picture on there. And mine said, citizenship not established, because I didn't have a birth certificate. All I had was a little piece of paper from the Bureau of Indian Affairs that I was born, but I didn't have a real birth certificate. So I had to take a trip back here, go to the post office in Hurdle, that's where they used to have one there, take my old aunt, two of my old aunts, And we have to fill out affidavits and everything. Yes, I was born, and I was born on such and such a date, to whom, and what my name was. And we filled all those papers out and everything, and then the postmaster put his seal on there. And they sent it into Madison, and I got a delayed birth certificate. I was involved in tribal politics. I was on a council for 12 years. I was the first tribal judge. I was the chief judge of the St. Croix. I was their health director. I was their housing authority director. I was the tribal administrator. In fact, all the employees used to call me the whip. I was strict, but I was fair. And the oldest graduate of LCO. I was 80 years old when I graduated. And I wouldn't even done that, I don't think, if Kate wasn't such a nagger. Please make the right choice and live your life and make your choice. And don't waver from that. And always think about the fact that if you're good to people, they'll be good back to you.
Annie was she was a sister that really, in her way, that like loved children. People were kind of, because she was a very formal type personality, but yet she could laugh. And people who knew her, once they met her, knew her and liked her and loved her. You know, she had a sense of humor. And she loved children. She wanted them to go the right path. You know, she didn't want anybody falling by the wayside, you know, and become lost, and you have to really struggle to get back on that even keel again. You know.
That's the way she wanted it. And she's gone, and she's with, with her people. That's the way we look at things. We do everything, like we lit the fire 4 days to light her way, and then we got our four-day feast.
You know, they all knew her and loved her. It wasn't just Native people, everybody did. You know, so she led a full life.